Mickevičienė, Miss Mickevičienė, and Vytis, Vidūnas, and Sreenivas onto the dais. It's a very interesting panel. Please take your seat. It's a very interesting panel. Sanskrit and Lithuanian, exploring the etymological connections. My pleasure to introduce Sreenivas. He's a scholar, translator, and a classical sitarist. And he has also written a number of works which are, I mean, it's a long list, including, one on Krishnadevaraya. And he has translated a number of Kalidasa's works. In fact, the whole gamut of Kalidasa's works. He's currently on a Fulbright Nehru Scholarship at IIT Gandhinagar. Over to you.
Especially to talk about a subject like language is to just have discussion. So we want to maximize that kind of interactive quality. I'll try to keep my comments short and we'll just try to have a conversation. So my first duty as the moderator is to introduce these two lovely people. And I just found out I have to do that. And I told you we just all met, so I'm sorry that I have to read from the book, but it's important, I think, to position and let people know two very accomplished, lovely people who've come and spent a lot of time in India. So it's lovely to see that kind of connection. Diana, tell me again. Mickevičienė. And I apologize for that. This happens all the time. I think it's like a very odd thing, I'll be honest. I don't know how many times I've been misintroduced in person, but it's something very funny when you have to do these things, but let it be. My apologies for that. Yeah. So I'll say she's the ambassador of the Republic of Lithuania to the Republic of India. She's a career diplomat with over 30 years of experience and was the ambassador of Lithuania to China from 2020 to 2022. She has a BA in philosophy, an MA in history of culture and social anthropology, and a diploma in international relations, and taught South Asian history at Vilnius University. She has published extensively on classical Indian dance and India-Lithuania historical relations, and also wrote a book, All of My India, published in 2011. She is fluent in English, French, Russian, and is familiar with Hindi, Spanish, Mandarin, and Sanskrit. Thank you so much for being here, Ambassador Diana. And beside Her Excellency the Ambassador is her guru, as she said last night. Her Sanskrit guru, Vytis Vidūnas, is a lecturer in Sanskrit at Vilnius University in Lithuania. He studied classical philology at Vilnius University and the Sanskrit Vedic language and ancient Indian literature at the Russian Academy of Sciences, Moscow. In 1993, he co-founded the Center of Oriental Studies at Vilnius University, thus reviving Sanskrit studies at the university and in Lithuania in general. He has also founded Hindi studies and Indian studies at Vilnius University, started a public initiative called Sanskrit of the Rivers, and published the Sanskrit-Lithuanian Etymological Dictionary in 2016. Very beautiful book. In 2023, he was nominated for the Lithuanian Indian Forum Award for the merit to the friendship between Lithuania and India. Welcome, Professor. You're welcome. Okay. Now let's have fun. The formalities are over. Please, if anyone would like to come forward, and there's some seats on the side, there's plenty of seats here. Please join us. We'd love to have you part of the conversation. Vijay, the organizer of this, asked me to moderate the session, I guess because I've studied some Sanskrit, and as you saw from the title of the panel, we're looking at the connections between Lithuanian, and Sanskrit. Samskritam. Now, what you might wonder, here you have a language, a European language so far away, Baltic language, an ancient language like Sanskrit. What could the connection be? And a lot of people don't realize that there is a deep, deep connection between these two languages. Not only, of course, are they Indo-European languages like many other languages, but Lithuanian is special because of the high degree in which it retained a closeness to that original Indo-European language. And because it retains the older forms, the language that it really becomes close to is Sanskrit. And that's what this book has presented. And we have a few copies of this book. For someone who's interested, you can come and talk to us after the presentation, and we'll see if we can get you a signed copy, maybe even. So maybe to start, Professor, would you like to add something to that? Just that kind of fundamental connection between these two languages?
Yes, this book, let's start from this book, how it happened. I published this book. In 2016, our previous Prime Minister is going to visit India. However, this visit was cancelled, but I was asked to make something to show connections between the Lithuanian language and Sanskrit. And I thought what I can do, and I prepared and published this very small book. I have chosen 108 words and called it Sanskrit-Lithuanian mala. Mala is, string with 108 bees. Yes, exactly. And I have chosen 108 words just like illustrative material to show both Indian people and to remind our Lithuanian people that we have deeper linguistic relations in between Sanskrit and the Lithuanian language. Because, this is the topic which was spoken in Lithuania more than 200 years already, and in various discussions this topic was discussed. And this is related, started from the beginning of the 19th century, when, and is related with the development of comparative linguistics. And linguists of that time, such as German linguist Franz Bopp, put together Lithuanian forms and Lithuanian words with Sanskrit words. And since that time, our intellectuals are interested in these connections, and I thought that it's good occasion to show this, and I put this very few, not very few, but 108 words. I did it on purpose because I wanted to show. But it is possible to collect more words, and now we are working on the dictionary project, just comparative dictionary of Sanskrit and Lithuanian with Indian scholars. I hope that we will finish this work in maybe in few years. No, not in few years. The ambassador wants us to do as fast as possible, but I would yes, it's very interesting topic, and I'm working on this now.
Wonderful. So to give you maybe a taste of how that comparison sounds, we'll give you a little snippet from the book. I'll read a small statement in Sanskritam, and Diana could, read the Lithuanian. Yes? Okay, so kas tvam asi?
Kas tu esi?
Tattvam asi.
Tat tu esi.
Devo dantan adadad devo danan dasyati.
Dievas dantis davė, Dievas duoną duos.
Svena sununa sahavirastam sanam ajam Munchati.
Munčyti. Su savo sūnumi didvyriai tą seną ožį paleidžia.
Karaswa mamsam patrat kribnati tad aticha.
Kada tavo šuo mėsą iš puodo griebia ir ją ėda.
So now we'll read you the English. Just now you can hear like this sound, all these sounds, with little changes are quite similar. So the first one was, who art thou? The second one was,
Famous Upanishads, Tattvamasi.
yes, you are that.
You are that Tattvamasi.
And the answer, that thou art.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this one is a little bit more interesting. The Devo Dantan, the God gave teeth, the God will give bread.
Yes. It's a Lithuanian proverb. Yes, exactly. And it was used by linguists for also since the beginning of the 19th century to compare Sanskrit with Lithuanian, and still is in use.
You can do this. You want to do the next one?
Yeah, the last one is really funny. It's, when does your dog grab meat from the pot and devour it? Well, it's probably constructed to illustrate the difference. It's not really.
It's a modest author of this sentence. Just I put it like an example of words.
I mean, and this brings up a point that I wanted to ask you both about. Sanskrit has a very prestigious, elevated, elite status in our tradition. And yet there is this famous linguist who said, if you want to really hear what Indo-European ancestors sounded like, go listen to a Lithuanian peasant, not a Lithuanian king, but a peasant. Now, what does that mean to you?
You have to know the history of Lithuania. So this is like, the linguists have acknowledged that it's a dinosaur among European languages, while others developed and modernized themselves, mostly simplifying themselves. Lithuanian, for some reason, remained archaic to its core and did not change much. And the reason is related to the status. Ironically, Sanskrit is a highly elevated status, and it was preserved as a sacred language. Basically, nobody was allowed, and the religious sanction is very strict against those who, they deviate from the right pronunciation and recitation. And this is exactly the opposite. It's the peasants who carry on, because elite since 16th, 17th century always spoke other languages. And this was tucked in a village. Well, this is just my guess, but I think it's very logical because, people in village, they don't care so much about what the urban people do. They don't look for the shortcuts. They just carry on because they are busy with something else. They have inherited the language. And the modern people in the city always look for some simplification, improvement, and so on. So that's the only logic I can apply, and that's how it becomes like socially, so to say, it's the languages on the opposite spectrum of the social ladder, because by the 19th century, Lithuanian was considered mean, uncultured, who was whoever in society had to speak Polish, Russian, French as a la mode, in those days in Europe. And Lithuanian was like, oh, okay, you don't even dare to speak it in public. But, and of course, the national movement which came up from that humiliation, end of 19th century, fought against it and rallied the people around the language, linguistically, because they felt this was a cause to rally around. Right. But to some extent, I think this social humiliation or whatever helped to preserve the language, because again, yes, there are many other languages which are similar. They have similarities with Sanskrit, and Slavic group, for example, is also, all of the languages are similar. There are similarities. But yet it is judged, this hypothesis of Lithuanian being probably the closest among the spoken languages. is based on how much this same language is archaic, how much we have taken innovations from other countries and from other languages. And Lithuanian, for some reason, has been the least changed and influenced language by neighbors and least simplified. So that's the key to the similarity.
Right. Wonderful. Professor, would you like to add something?
No, yes, I agree totally with Diana, because the Lithuanian language was a conservative language because it was used by one social level of our society, by local people and in local areas. So it was like put in a tin box and kept many ages, for many ages in such condition. On the other hand, Sanskrit was sacred language from the beginning, from Panini, and it was preserved by social society on this status. And we can say that Sanskrit, classical Sanskrit, haven't changed since the time of Panini, because it is restricted. All languages in India which are developed from the same group, so-called Indo-Aryan languages, they changed.
Yes.
It was Middle Indo-Aryan languages, New Indo-Aryan languages, we know, but not Sanskrit. Sanskrit remained the same, and Lithuanian and the Sanskrit, they remained the same. And when it was discovered, it's amazing, because we have declension system almost the same like in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
In Sanskrit, with only one case is one more case we have in Sanskrit than in Lithuanian, and you know that modern languages, they have no declension. Yeah. For example, Hindi, no declension at all, and so on. They changed, not Sanskrit and not Lithuanian, and that's very important to research historical links between the Lithuanian language and Sanskrit.
And yet it seems so interesting that the reason Sanskritam doesn't change is because of something like Panini's Astadhyai, where you have a grammar that says these are the forms.
Exactly.
It's not evolving. It's a frozen language. And yet Lithuanian is a spoken living language that remained fairly conservative in its morphological change.
Yes.
So they both stayed kind of the same for very different reasons.
Yes, so for different reasons, but they remain the same, and it is amazing, and for me it's very interesting to work on this.
So getting back to the point you mentioned about language and a kind of, let's not get to national yet, but a certain kind of identity that comes with that language, like how important it is to you, how important it is to the history of the Lithuanian people's sense of self, is that connection to a language and a pride in that language, if I could say.
It's definitely of primal importance. As I was mentioning, end of 19th century, the whole rebirth of a nation, or actually birth of a modern nation, was rallied around the language. And the reason was that historically we were a very big country in Europe, which encompassed many other ethnic groups that spoke several other languages. And then we joined the union with Poland, where Poland was bigger and increasingly over decades and centuries started dominating. So the elites shifted to speaking Polish. Therefore, the modern identity discovery, self-discovery of identity was related to that. And of course, end of 18th century, both Lithuania and Poland fell under Russian Empire, which actually, came repressing the language. Wherever Russians ruled, they tried, to make people forget their languages. Ukraine is now the latest case, where Russians are saying that Ukrainians don't exist, and for 200 years we've been trying to make them cease their existence. In our case, our language is pretty different from Russian, so it was very difficult, but still it became the rallying point of existence. The language was banned in the 19th century. We had 3 rebellions. So after the third one, language was banned, university was closed, and everything that reminded the rulers about special identity had to be suppressed. And it came out with force, because when you suppress something very important as an element, it bounces. So it did become an essential thing. And I have to say that relation to Sanskrit became an important element of pride as early as late 19th century.
Yes, exactly.
And you know, when these German linguists come and start speaking and analyzing the language hidden in villages, they have to actually leave a city to find those people, because cities don't speak it anymore. And then those early intellectuals who were our leaders of a new self-discovery of identity, it made it a pride of point, because wow, we are precious enough to be put on the same, like in the same book, in the same table next to Sanskrit, Latin, ancient Greek. So for us, and while Latin and ancient Greek were of course very important, and they were still part of European civilization, relationship to an Indian language, a sacred language, was like even more important.
Amazing.
So everybody knew, and it continues to be a big point in Lithuania. People know basically about this.
Yes, exactly. And
it pointed our value. It proved our value. It helped us to be proud about ourselves.
exactly.
So we're grateful for that, basically.
Welcome. Yeah, you know, it's amazing, because Sanskrit is still some detail of our national identity, I can say, because all Lithuanians could say, oh, Sanskrit, yes, we are related with Sanskrit, and some of them just say we speak Sanskrit because...
The legend of Sanskrit in Lithuania.
And, you know, until now there has been a very nice popular myth that we could...
speak without translation.
Speak without any interpreter in India. And when I tell people that I'm teaching Sanskrit as a Sanskrit lecturer at the university, they said, "Oh, yes, but we are very close. You know, you don't need any interpreter when you go to India." I says, "Yes, especially if you go to Telugu speaking area, really, because people really don't know that in India we have."
All these different...
It's like a big pot of languages, and here I'm sitting. I'm sorry, I don't know anything about Telugu.
That's okay. Well, now I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yes.
You know, we're in a Telugu-speaking area.
Because I would like, but it's very interesting.
Well, thinking about how, I mean, because Sanskritam is not really a spoken language. I mean, some people speak it, but generally, you know, it's not one of the large spoken languages of India. And yet, if you look at these different languages, Telugu, of all the languages of India that I've studied, has the highest percentage of Sanskrit vocabulary.
Yes.
More than Hindi, more than other North Indian languages.
Yes.
There's a massive amount of... I mean, we use Sanskrit words in common discourse all the time.
I've noticed that it's amazing, because you know, you have different languages in the south. Telugu, Kannada, Tamil language, and Malayalam. I was working for several years in Kerala. I've noticed that a lot of words in Malayalam languages, they have they use Sanskrit words as well. It was easier for me, even in street communication, because sometimes I was confused. They never write words in Devanagari, and I was a little bit sometimes. It was difficult for me to find my way, but it was okay.
So while this has been made into a sort of a myth of pride, you know, for us, but true, there are interesting words, or not even words, but names, for example, in Lithuania, which you would not decipher from Lithuanian language perspective, but you find the equivalent in Sanskrit. And that's one of the amazing things about the river that is in my native place. So I grew up on a small river which has a name Siesartis. And no matter how you try to decipher it in Lithuanian, knowing the linguistic and historical perspective, you don't find the answer what it means. But it's very nicely translated from Sanskrit, and it means to flow, basically. Sisarti.
Flow.
And then once you know, yes, you find some remnants of, there is a word which is rarely used in Lithuanian, which sounds slightly different. It's sruti, sruva.
Sruti.
Which is from that same root, but the derivative, which became the name of the river, which was next to my home, is very Sanskritic name.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's in, and actually the very name of Sanskritam, you can translate it from Lithuanian. Lithuanian we say
Yes,
sukurtas.
yes,
Sukurtas, which means created.
Created,
Created.
And
Yeah.
that's
created,
basically what it means.
elaborated.
Yeah, elaborated.
Sanskritam.
That's what
Yeah,
Sanskritam means,
Sukurtas.
exactly.
Yes, yes. The
So
same.
we don't leave the aspirates in the end, H, like
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Sanskrit, we say S all the time. So sukurtam, sukurta, sukurtas would be the
Yes.
correct version.
But
for
even in
Lithuanian.
Sanskrit Sandhi, the last visarga changes to sa.
Sa, yes, because,
oftentimes.
Linguists would say that originally it is se changed to visarga in the ending position of Sanskrit.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's and concerning Siesartis is exactly intensive form. You are Sanskrit. Intensive form from the root sisarti. It's that root in Sanskrit. It's very easy.
Yeah.
It's a tiny river. It's means a rivulet. It's just a small,
rapid river.
Small.
Right. So like names like that kind of survive through all of the changes of
Yes.
history because
Exactly.
yeah. So that's very interesting. Now let's go back to another interesting thing about language and identity, which is a very critical aspect of Indian culture. I mean, we don't have a national language. In this country with so many languages, we couldn't decide on one. I mean, we have official languages, which are English, like we're speaking now, and Hindi, but we don't have one national language because it's just too linguistically diverse and people had different opinions about what it should be. And so we have two official languages. What happened later, and was very important specifically to this area of India, was the development of states based on linguistic kind of majority speaking. So like Telangana now, it used to be part of a bigger state on the right, was a Telugu speaking area majority. Karnataka, Kannada speaking. Maharashtra, Marathi speaking. Now, do you find any of that kind of division within Lithuania? Like this area has been maybe more Polish speaking, this area is more Russian speaking, or people identify with certain other languages besides Lithuanian in terms of their own identity? Do you feel that? Like, what language does Vilnius University use as the standard language for instruction? Those kinds of questions I'd be curious to know about.
Well, again, Lithuanian history is very turbulent, and there have been a lot of displacements and changes over centuries. Now we are pretty homogeneous. We are 85% Lithuanian speaking ethnically, but it is a result of huge changes. And also those changes came because of a massive, Polonization, for example. From 16th century, it became a language of court and elite, and church, and especially church, really contributed to Polonizing a lot of population. So many of our names changed the endings, and it's very interesting now, for example, when we speak with our Polish friends, that for example, my name, my last name, which is my husband's name, has a Lithuanian root, a Polish ending. So you can decode it. As a very famous national poet of Poland, Adam Mickiewicz, which in Lithuanian is Mickevičius, it's the same name like my husband's. And he was born in Lithuania. He wrote about Lithuania, but he wrote in Polish. So it's very difficult and we had a difficult relationship with Poland. We had a war 100 years ago. We had a ceasefire line, basically, not even the border. So there was a lot of difficulties sharing that heritage, because Lithuanians at that time were also of that mind that Lithuanian should be Lithuanian speaking. that has changed a lot, and in that sense, I think there is also a comfort that knowing that we are safe, that the language has been saved, because we were close to the Irish scenario, where the Irish language really almost died, right? So in our case, but these wars and displacements were with a lot of bloodshed that had happened. So after, oh my God, there was a war with Poland, and then Soviets came. So we were enemies with Poland, but Soviets came and took all of us together. So that's like, you have to really look at the neighbors and evaluate who is your real neighbor, because then, this happened to us. But then the Polish were displaced, and Vilnius used to be predominantly Polish-speaking people, a city, but then again, due to a lot of Polonization. Now it's Lithuanian-speaking. We have our biggest minority is Polish, which is 6%. So you do have regions which are dominated by Polish speakers, part of the southeast. For Russian language, we have about 5% probably of Russian speakers, but they are dispersed. They don't have an indigenous region because it was never the language of the soil. It was always imposed, so you would have pockets among professionals maybe, or immigrants of certain times, or probably mostly Soviet time, where many people who were not Russians, but they spoke Russian because of the assimilation that their joint families or professional assimilations. And then we have many other small languages, including very cute Turkic languages like Tatar, which our Grand Dukes brought from Crimea, from Ukraine. They settled as personal guards of a Grand Duke in the court. And then we have Karaites, which are Turkic by ethnic origin, but Jewish, of a certain sect of Judaism by religion. And they're tiny minorities in thousands, but their cuisine has become part of a cuisine of the country. So when I have to entertain guests in Delhi, sometimes I order those Turkic Tatar pastries because they symbolize us in a way. So it's a bit of a composite culture that we have inherited, but linguistically we are pretty homogeneous right now. And I think this is a guarantor that this language would not die, because it was endangered language at some point. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to add. Yes, nowadays the majority of in Lithuania, we are Lithuanians, and your question even was about the university, and in the university we use Lithuanian language nowadays. The main language of our studies is Lithuanian, and our students, they speak Lithuanian language fluently. That's the main. All curricula is in Lithuanian.
And so, there are, let us say, Telugu medium schools, but now it's becoming much more common to have English medium schools in India. Or where I teach, it's all in English. How has English, as this kind of big global lingua franca, affected the way that students or even young people in Lithuania?
Now it's a hot topic in Lithuania.
We're here to discuss hot topics.
Old people and linguists, they are talking, yes, we will die again, because the English language is coming. All our youngsters, they are speaking English, they are writing SMS and not SMS, everything they are writing in English, and they use English words. I don't think so that this we are in danger. Personally, myself, I don't think. I even think that nowadays the Lithuanian language is in very good status, never been before. Really, we are strong in language. Of course, we need to teach our young people and to I don't know, not to force, to inspire them to use native language and the forms of native language. Even, we have specific letters in Lithuania, in the Lithuanian language, with some diacritics. And the funny thing that my children usually write SMS messages or messages on messengers without that. I don't want to bore them because it's always you are old father.
You're a professor.
I answer with all diacritics and all. But I've noticed that they get older and they began to use these diacritics as well. So I work in this way.
Nice. Ambassador?
There is this debate about how many new words or borrowed, words from English, for example, we should include in our language, which should sanction. We have a very strict language commission, in fact, which is the only censorship in Lithuania. Otherwise, we don't have any censorship of any sort. Language censorship is there. I know that even the anchors in the news, they have to, somebody is always checking their pronunciation and then they have to account for every mistake that they made on screen. But this debate has been on, and we had funny cases, for example, when in 1919, the first modern Lithuanian Republic came up, and the language was being standardized, and yes, that's when it was brought out of villages into the cities. So we had to use, words like radio and, include all the modern words. So the names for sports was an interesting case in point, because for some reason we adopted football, but we rejected basketball, and we had translated basketball when we use the word krepšinis, and krepšinis comes from krepšis, which is basket, so it's a direct translation. Why?
That's we translated.
And krepšinis, or basketball, in fact, is our national sports. It became really a part of our identity, that second religion, as we say. Why you don't? I would never understand why football was integrated and accepted as an international term. And basketball was rejected. So now, of course, the same debate goes about all the computer terms and all the other things which we borrow from other languages and either translate and integrate or accept the modern version. But I have a sense that young Lithuanians are born with a knowledge of English. That's what I've seen in babies, and I fail to understand that. But so far, so good for language. I think the indication, the words, they should be flexible. The words, they travel. Even if many people who ask me about the Sanskrit-Lithuanian connection. So many words. Yes, many words. This is 108 in the dictionary, but he's working on that, what we say, 1008. Another sacred number, But it's not even in words, because words travel extensively. And you look at the Thai language, or in Indonesia, Bali, where they have really taken so many words, but the grammars are very different. So it's the affinity which is based on borrowed words through culture, through religion. In our case, it's a very structural affinity through the language, from the grammar. Declension, conjugation.
Yes, exactly.
And that doesn't change. I haven't seen any trend of simplifying Lithuanian. I think it's safe.
The main thing we should preserve is structure of language, and this is nowadays I consider that is fine with the Lithuanian language. It's fine. We can borrow some words from other languages, but it's fine. It's fine. Everything.
Yeah, I'll start the questions. Please have this one. Okay. Well, let's open it up for questions. But just one quick thing. Telugu is a very interesting language because although it has a lot of Sanskrit, it's also very accepting and absorbative of any language, any word. And all you have to do is add u. So this is like a bukku, wataru, kappu.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
So I will know how to. It's great. I've learned Telugu already.
So famous Kolaveri D was written by a Telugu-speaking man?
Yeah, probably.
Kolaveri D.
Yes, fine.
So, I like what you said, though. Words move, words travel, and they're absorbed wherever they go.
Exactly.
So let's, Madam Acharya, do we have a mic? One second. Okay, go ahead, sir. Please speak into the mic,
very,
sir.
very happy to know the connection, linguistic connection between Lithuania and India, particularly Sanskrit and its sibling language, Lithuanian. But I would like to know, since we started somewhere language some thousands of years ago, the same point, did you have any remnants of ancestral, cultural things also, like epics, gods, and pujas, worship? All these things are also might be there in your culture.
Right.
Maybe
Good question,
later,
sir. Nice question.
engulfed by the church and all these things. But basically, at the root of the language,
Yeah.
you
So-
might have been having.
Yeah. Let's take another question and we'll answer them all together. Nice question, sir.
So mine was kind of related. I wanted to say that there is some genetic similarity that has traveled down from Lithuania to India and others. But it also says that music travels closer when it comes to culture, to words as well. So is there similarity in terms of music that you have found as well?
Wonderful. Sir, you want to add one more? Because these are all related. Nice questions. Okay, well, let go ahead.
My name is N. Raja. I am a retired government servant, civil central government servant. I have taken interest in Sanskrit after service. As you kindly told, Mr. Sreenivas Reddy had told that there are number of words, Sanskrit words, in Telugu, the highest number of words. It is every Indian language has absorbed so many Sanskrit words. But I want to know in a world perspective, the linguists are here. For example, in Sanskrit, there is a specific saha gacchati, tau gacchataha, two people. Te gacchanti, three or more go. I am going into slight because you are an expert. There is a structure. Then there is this called conjugation, as they put it in English. And there are cases, Ramaha, Ramo, Rama, Ramam, Ramo, Raman, like that.
Right. Yes.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, I want to know, somebody said that Russian language has got a similar structure.
Okay.
They have got 7
Yeah.
Yes.
cases.
right.
So, does Lithuanian language also has got all these type of...
Great. Yeah.
Sorry, I want to...
Exactly.
No, it's fine, sir. That's a good question.
We understand.
We got the question.
That is my
Professor, why
simple
don't you
question.
take that one and we'll get to the other two.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
I don't know.
all of these questions are about the connection between Lithuanian and Sanskritam. This one was the more linguistic question. We'll
yes.
come back to the mythological and musical one.
So we start from this question.
Yeah, let's start here.
Exactly. We have conjugational and system and declension, and as a matter of fact, nowadays dual forms as for 1, 2, and 3 and more. Dual forms are almost extinct in the Lithuanian language, but still we have archaic forms. If we are speaking about declension, I just wanted, I put in on the list, I will cite some cases, and you will see. Nominative case for Sanskrit of the word for God is devas. According to Sanskrit rules, it is devah, and in Lithuanian is dievas, and then we go. Vocative case. Deva, Lithuanian dieve, accusative case devam, Lithuanian dieva, which was earlier devan, in instrumental case devena, in Lithuanian dievu, and so on. Not all paradigm I want to quote, but we have, for example, two gods devau in Sanskrit. In Lithuania we have archaic form dievu, two of gods, du dievu. And then if we shift to conjugational system, we have, I want to cite only, if you are patient enough, one verb, to be, as. In Lithuanian also is the same forms. For example, in Sanskrit we have asti, asi, asmi, the singular forms. In Lithuanian forms we have esti, esi, esmi. Almost the same. So we have not only correspondences and resemblances in lexical system, in words, we have also very resemblances in grammatical system. It's quite amazing.
Exactly. So let's go to other cultural, maybe mythological connections, and possibly some musical, artistic
I'll try to
connections.
make a bridge to music as well. Yes, in fact, there are important similarities, even though speaking about the ancient culture, not so much today's culture. We are Christian, predominantly population practices Christianity, but we are the latest pagans, as we say in Europe. We had adopted Christianity, the latest of all. So the formal baptizing happened in the end of the 14th century. Yet it took at least 200 years for the Christianity to be firmly embedded in the court, and even more to get down to everyone, all the layers of society. So, and then by late 20th century, the pagan movements came up, which were based on the research of folklore and mythology. And they have just recently been recognized as a religion. So they recreated the practices and rites. And they actually are very much in touch with some sectors in India looking for inspiration even. But our own Christianity is also full of worship of nature. It's slightly different in many ways. And I have seen the strangest rituals that are practiced. For example, where we have a country house in a village, the old people told us that they still remember how a lady, after milking a cow, would always put a bowl of milk for the snake, the grass snakes. They are non-poisonous, they're not dangerous, but they would come.
For Nagas.
So it's clearly something to do with the Naga worship, because you can't explain it in other ways. And then, all the names of gods that used to be, there were gods which symbolized different elements, which used to be worshipped. They became nice names now. Now you have women and men named after clearly non-Christian names, and some of them we don't even know, the meanings are lost, but many of them are gods of various aspects of fire, of, wind, of morning, for example. And then we have, even some of the names of animals like Ashva, right?
Ashva, female horse.
It's a horse-based culture which clearly put some sanctity on horse. But in our case, we have Ashva and Ashvinis, which is very close to Ashvin, twins. And they somehow went down to symbolize the horse for work, for agricultural work, because there are horses for different types of work. It's the whole world of horses. But this word, which means generic horse in Sanskrit, now means work horse in Lithuania. So you have these things. And on music, I think this is the least researched sector. And, if you had asked me like half a year ago, I would have said probably very difficult to see connections. But I recently came up with, I listened to some researcher who recorded an old lady singing, who was a folk singer from the village. And, there are those rare records from the 50s, maybe 50s, 60s. And to me, her sound, her folk songs recorded in that old, LP, which we now digitalized, are incredibly similar to a lot of that fluctuation, that happens in Indian melodies. I was shocked myself. So now, I can say we just don't know. I think we need to do a lot of work to do on
Let's
that.
do some music
It's a very
research.
pleasant surprise to me.
That's the field of research. So, because you are a musician, and maybe we'll proceed after that.
Well, I think it's interesting that all these questions, and even the whole idea of why Lithuanian was preserved like this, is that it was done when people stayed away from civilizing powers. When they stayed in the village, when they stayed with their culture, when they stayed out of these big empires and big movements. So that's where we need to go to study these old forms. And I find that fascinating.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yes, madam.
Ancestral temple culture like that of Turkey and Spain and other places. Temples culture.
Do you have temple culture? Let's take that quick. Let's ancestral.
So, well, I just wanted to point out, because I was preparing to meet this guest nation of Lithuania, I did some reading. I also visited a city in Lithuania called Klaipėda. I believe that is named after some myth about a fox or a wolf. So there is a lot of myth even in Lithuanian culture, because as you say, they were the last ones to go Christian from pagan. But what strikes me as really remarkable when I read some of the poetry, the stories, and the plays, and the films that I saw in this festival, is that your culture, in spite of being repressed and severely repressed, has sought to stay alive in its own literature, because you have, what I feel is it's dark, but it's extremely expressive and symbolic, your whole literature. And I have also understood that many of your writers, though they write in Lithuanian, they also have lived outside of Lithuania. All right? Just wanted to, since we're connecting and comparing Indian and Lithuanian, whereas we who have been colonized over many hundreds of years have taken very readily to the colonial language which has been imposed, and in fact it has brought us together in some way. So there is this sort of a trend that I find amazing, that Lithuania has preserved its language and today has rules and laws which are ensuring that it stays alive. And in India, even though we are nationalistic, we do have a national language and we have a lot of pride in our regional languages. The aspirations of people are for an English-based life,
So, And what is the question?
The question was, how do you explain this? How do you explain this trend? Usually a language is wiped out by the severity.
Okay, so I think what is the resilience of the Lithuanian people that through all of this history you were able to retain that language and hold on to it and bring it to the stage that you both had mentioned earlier? Is there something there?
It is definitely something that is a pillar of identity. You just can't define Lithuanian in many other ways. And probably because it's so antique, we call it a dinosaur of languages, right? It is also a part of a pride is related to that it's very rare. We are a small nation, so we have to keep it up,
so
because
small
I
as
believe the world will become poorer if we lose one language, be it Lithuanian or another one. So of course all languages need to be protected. But yes, very true. It's always very linguistically defined and very also, if you talk about culture, very much nature worship, nature love for nature. Even today defines Lithuanians a lot. But coming to the question about temples, so, the pagan religion, in the pre-Christian religion in Lithuania was not about temples, but of course there were temples and they would be defined by the natural features. something like a sacred grove and a circle of stones. So they were never, I mean, we don't know anything about the temples except that there was an altar and there was a, I mean, it was really, the directions were very much related to the directions of, the world and the movement of, bodies in stars and planets. That's all we know, but it's it's also a wooden culture. So even our most beautiful churches, I believe, are wooden churches, which I find striking similarities with Himachali, wood-carved churches, because that's just striking. When you go there, I always feel very, very excited and emotional about that. So yes, there is definitely something. So in fact, the similarity in cultures would not be between contemporary Hinduism or Hinduism of the temples, which only starts like 6th century, 7th century in India, but with the Vedic, which is an altar-based, right? And in fact, it was Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, the famous Bengali linguist, who said, and I guess it was the beginning of 20th century, where Bengal was a brewing place for the Indian national revival in search of roots, that if you need to know how the Vedic worship go to Lithuania. I have a quote, I don't remember it like word by word, but it's there, it's in the records.
Professor, any concluding thoughts?
No, I don't know, but really we had especially concerning question about our language and some resistance. Yes, we had some resistance during different years of colonization. Because in the 20th century, half of my life I spent in the Soviet Union, so we were forced to speak Russian in official life. We spoke Russian, but always we have some kind of feeling that we had some resistance for that. That's like and that's kept us stronger. Stronger.
Beautiful. So with that, I think we're going to close this session. Let's all thank Ambassador Diana, Professor Vytis, Naina for hosting, and all of you for being here and participating. We really appreciate it. Continue to support.
Many thanks for your kind attention. Really, we're really touched.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.